My name is Kun Chen, and I'm going to draw my life. So I'm Kun Chen, and I'm a 13-year-old bhikkhu, which is a Buddhist monk. To become a bhikkhu, there's a long process of disciplinary training and an education ceremony involving the novice, the abbot, which is the head of the monastery, and the sangha, which is the community of monks. I had to shave off all of my hair on my head and answer questions from the elder monks. My answers satisfied the elders and no other monk objected. I was really proud of myself that time because I was then admitted to the sangha and the religious training started. All monks must observe altogether 227 rules, which guide us in our everyday lives. When I was anointed to be a monk, I was reborn into a new life, and my past life didn't exist anymore. Once I show a lot of dedication to being a monk to both social work and spiritual study, I can then be promoted gradually until I reach the Sangha Supreme Council. But since I'm still young, I still have a long ways to go. My life in the temple always starts by waking up very early at 3:30 a.m. And from there, I put on my robe on properly and go brush my teeth. After getting ready, everyone gets into an orderly fashioned line and we head off to the morning ceremony, which starts at 4 a.m. The ceremony begins with the recitation of the Shurangama mantra, one of the longest and most powerful mantras in Buddhism. A mantra is a sequence of words or syllables that are chanted, usually repetitively, as part of the Buddhist practice. The reason we chant mantras is because it has certain effects, like protecting the world from disasters or removing past negative karma. The ceremony lasts for an hour, and after that hour, we have an hour of meditation. Sometimes people meditate on their own, and so they read from the Buddhist holy books while meditating. I like meditating with others because at that point, it gives me an excuse to take a nap. Once the meditation ends, we head off to take a walk in the neighborhood. Us monks walk around the neighborhood barefooted while the local people be very nice and offer us some food. While walking around, my friend and I always like to talk about the different festivals in Buddhism, like the Loi Krathong. That's the festival of the floating bowls. It takes place on the full moon night of the 12th lunar month. People bring bowls made of leaves, which contain flowers, candles, and incense sticks, and float them in the water. As they go, all bad luck is supposed to disappear. There's also the Vesak, or Buddha Day. The Vesak is the major Buddhist festival of the year as it celebrates the birth, enlightenment, and death of the Buddha on the one day, the first full moon day in May. My favorite festival is the Songkran. It's a festival that goes on for several days, and that's when people clean their houses, wash their clothes, and enjoy sprinkling us monks with perfumed water. After a few hours of being outside, we return back to the temple to eat breakfast. Everyone sits together and we make a blessing for world peace. Before noon, some monks choose to eat a light lunch at this time. This is the last solid food we're allowed to eat until sunrise the following morning. I'm usually one of the people that take this light lunch because if I didn't, my tummy would be grumbling all day. After my light lunch, I head to class. Some monks may be allowed to attend school outside of the temple. I decide to learn in the temple because our teacher is always so funny. During class, we talked about the 3 important times in our lives, which are birth, marriage, and death. When a child is born, Buddhists usually have a naming ceremony. It can take place at a nearby temple, and after the naming, monks bless the child and sprinkle them with holy water. This ceremony can also take place at the newborn's home. The father will invite bhikkhus and laymen to his home and offer them food. After the food offering, the father places the child in front of the bhikkhus, take the 5 precepts from them, and request them to recite paritas, which are Buddhist suttas. The bhikkhus will recite the suttas and other suttas that they think will fit with the occasion. The leader of the bhikkhus will give a name to the child, or if the father desires that the name be given by some other person. The significance of this ceremony is to help the child grow up in good health and live a long and prosperous life. The effect of reciting the suttas is to scare away the bad spirits who might harm or even kill the child. In some countries, monks aren't allowed to attend wedding ceremonies because it is believed that it will bring bad luck. Although, there are countries that have monks that do attend the weddings. The ceremony takes place at a local temple, and like any other wedding, the bride and groom are surrounded by friends and family. During the ceremony, there's the image of the Buddha and it's wrapped with cotton thread. The thread circulates to all those in the congregation. The thread represents the union of all present. Throughout the ceremony, monks are chanting and it fills the temple. After the head monk blesses the couple, 2 pieces of the thread are cut. A monk ties on around the groom's wrist, then the groom does the same to the bride. Then we also talked about death. We learned that Buddhists could either be buried or cremated. At the place of burial, the monks will recite the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. The relatives perform a symbolic action of giving the white cloth, which covers the coffin, to the monks, and the mourners will pour water into a cup until it overflows. That symbolizes the transfer of merit to the deceased. Monks will then recite verses from Buddhist scripture and give a sermon on life and death. I never knew it was common for monks to visit the home of the dying person. They always comfort them with religious chants. I don't think I could ever chant to someone who's dying. I would cry too much. Anyways, these verses remind the person that although we die, goodness and mercy are timeless. Even after the death, the chanting still continues in order to ensure the purification of the soul. Today, I also learned a lot about the Buddha, like the different symbols to represent him. Apparently, the Buddha was unwilling to accept images of himself because he didn't like to be respected as a person. Some symbols to represent the Buddha are the 8-spoked wheel and the Bodhi tree, but also the Buddha's footprints, a begging bowl, and a lion. The 8-spoked Dharma wheel symbolizes the Buddha's turning the wheel of truth or law. There's a story that said that once the Buddha reached enlightenment, Brahma came down and requested that the Buddha should teach. Brahma gave the Buddha the 8-spoked wheel, and from there, the Buddha was known as the wheel turner. That means he sets a new cycle of teachings. The 8 spokes represent the Eightfold Noble Path. The middle swirly part represents Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, which are the 3 jewels of Buddhism. The Bodhi tree refers to the tree where the Buddha reached enlightenment. Then there's also the lion, and usually a lion is associated with strength and power. Since the Buddha was a royal prince, it's an appropriate symbol for the Buddha. Sometimes the Buddha's teachings are referred to as the lion's roar. There, it signifies his strength and power again. The footprints of the Buddha traditionally symbolize the physical presence of the Enlightened One. We were told that there's a story, and it says that prior to his death, the Buddha left an imprint on his foot on a stone near Kusinara, a reminder of his presence on earth. And lastly, there's the begging bowl, and that refers to the story of when the Buddha almost reached enlightenment. A young girl came and gave him a bowl of rice. After he reached enlightenment, it is said that he had thrown away that little what was left in the bowl to signify his rejection of all material possessions. The bowl also points to the monk's way of life. We go from the monastery and into the village each morning, and we live off of what is put into the village by lay people. Once class is over, we head off to meditate and pray for 2 hours. And like always, after a day of class, I always get homework. So after the 2 hours of meditation, us monks are let out to do our homework. And that then ends my day. I'm Kun Chen, and that was a day in my life.